How are we all doing? Well, thank you so much for including me in this year's Rev. It's an honor to be here. But before I get started, I do need to make one quick announcement. My name, Heidi, I've actually changed my name. My whole life, I've been known as Ethan Zahn. In high school, sometimes they called me the Zahner, but things are different now. Ever since I got home from that Survivor show, things have changed. So my first name is still Ethan, but my last name is from Survivor, and that's all one word. And I do need to mention how cute I think it is that the media is having so much fun fixating on the irony that I'm a cancer survivor that was on a reality television show called Survivor. And it could have been a lot worse. I could have been on that show, The Walking Dead. So I'm pretty happy that's the way it worked out. How many people in this room have seen the show Survivor? Nice. How many people have not seen the show Survivor? Okay, you're gonna have to leave. But Survivor did change my life. You know, the experience on the show touched on every part of me as a human. You know, physical, social, spiritual, environmental, similar to the way that cancer touches you. But as we all know, you know, cancer is not a game. Living with barely enough food and water and TV cameras for 39 days was torture. But the real challenge came when I suddenly had to figure out, what do you do when you win $1 million? Don't worry, I invested it well. I went into business with this really nice Nigerian guy I met over email. You guys might know him, I'm not sure. I'm a pretty smart guy. No. But I'd just like to give you some background on how all this got started, because I think it will give you some perspective on why I'm standing before you this afternoon and why I've made the choices I have. Before Survivor, I lived and played professional soccer in Zimbabwe. And news from Zimbabwe over the past 10 years has been pretty unsettling. And one of my strongest memories of my time in Zimbabwe was of all the graveyards there. My team, the Highlanders Football Club, we'd smush into these tiny white little vans and travel these long, long, dusty roads to get to our away matches. And I'd see these graveyards on the side of the road, and some of the headstones were perfectly organized, one right after another. In other areas, there were these crosses, you know, piled high, overflowing on the streets. So I asked one of my teammates, I'm like, why are some people buried like this and others buried like that? And he looked at me, he says, well, that's where they bury all the people that die of AIDS. Whoa. To see a physical representation of everyone that's dying of this horrible disease was shocking to me. People are dying, everyone knows why, but no one dares mutter this word. And this was the first time I saw how one disease was destroying a community. You know, I saw the pain and the suffering that this one disease could do. I had the compassion for all these people touched by this single disease. But at that time in my life, I didn't do anything about it. I said, screw it, it's not my problem. Someone else will deal with it. You know, it's in a land far away, so I shelved it. Well, now fast forward to Survivor. Once again, I was brought back to Africa, but this time to Kenya. And while I was on the show, I won this reward challenge where I won these 2 goats, which I wasn't too happy about. But I took these 2 goats to this little village of Wamba. And I was hanging out in the parking lot of Wamba Hospital and ended up playing with all these little Kenyan children. Later to find out that they were HIV positive. And that's where I had my do something moment, as I like to call it. You see, all I had with me were the clothes on my back and my one luxury item of choice, which was for me, this, a little mini soccer ball, a hacky sack. And this was my most prized possession, the one item I'm allowed to bring from home that reminds me of my life away from the game of Survivor. And I just gave it away. And I mean, talking about it sounds silly, but this was a tough decision for me. You know, this was a real moment of personal truth. But I realized that this small gesture made a difference to me and to another. A toy to me was a luxury to this little kid. So in that instant of handing it over, I began to understand that age-old saying, it's better to give than it is to receive. And I truly believe that's how we can all begin to change the world. So without ever really knowing it, I brought along all the things I needed to survive. It It was just me and my guts, because once you take away food and you take away water and you're tired and you're hungry and you're thirsty, your true colors come into focus. And all that you're left with is your values, the will to survive, and that very essence of the human spirit. But the real reason no one had the heart to vote me off out there was as time passed, my hair grew longer, my beard grew thicker, the more I looked like Jesus. I can't vote off Jesus, no. So I get home from the show, I got some money in my pocket, I got 15 minutes of fame, and it didn't take me long to leave that reality and go back to reality. Because for winning that money made me take a good hard look at who I was and who I wanted to become. And maybe a TV and a car and an apartment would make me temporarily happy, but I wanted to be the type of person who used his celebrity and his money to make a difference in the lives of others. So I took my $1 million and I invested in something much bigger than myself. I co-founded a charity called Grassroots Soccer, and we used the power of soccer in the fight against HIV and AIDS. But this concept of educating others through sport and raising awareness through sport is something that is really saving lives, something that Livestrong does incredibly well, and that's why I've made a choice to help Livestrong and do everything I can to make them a better organization and see them grow. So you see, I've been incredibly fortunate to have experienced a lot of great things in my life. Traveled the world, played in packed soccer stadiums. I got a tweet from Lance Armstrong. But I still felt there's something missing in my life. So I decided to get cancer. And this is my story. I was 35 years old, on top of the world, training for the New York City Marathon, feeling happy, healthy, dating this hot chick. And I had some really itchy skin. And no one could figure out what it was. I tried every pill, cream, potion, went to every doctor on the planet, nothing. Until a swollen lymph node popped out of my neck, and they found a mass in my chest. And after 4 months of wondering what was going on inside me, I was diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma called CD20 positive Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had never heard of it either, don't worry. But as you can imagine, my life was flipped upside down. But the doctors, they told me I had a good cancer, 90% survival rate. And to me, there are no good cancers, just like there's no good wars and there's no good earthquakes, but I was happy about the diagnosis, and when a doctor tells you to do something or you'll die, you pretty much do it. And I was placed on 2 different forms of chemotherapy, didn't work. 22 blasts of radiation, didn't work. And then I had an autologous stem cell transplant. And there were some pretty horrible days going through that situation. Times where I felt like my whole body had turned against me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, hair was falling out, I had no energy, I felt miserable. But that process got the cancer into remission for a while. I was in remission for 20 months, everyone, 20 months. I mean, it may not seem like a long time for everyone, but if you think about it, it's still 528 days longer than Kim Kardashian's marriage. So I got that going for me. Late in the summer of 2011, I started getting itchy all over again. I went in for my normally scheduled PET scan, and they found 7 new nodes of cancerous growth in my chest. And I was re-diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma on September 28th, 2011. And getting the news that the cancer returned was deflating. It was exponentially more difficult this second time around. And I knew I was chemo-resistant. I had maximum dose of radiation. I had an autologous stem cell transplant. I was running out of options. I was pissed off and frustrated and scared and lonely, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for this to be it. And as a patient, it's really hard to articulate what it feels like to be seriously ill. It pays to have a positive outlook, but when your team of doctors try multiple ways of healing you that don't work, you panic. I craved survival. I lost hope. And luckily, I started a new, smart, targeted therapy. Now, I don't know what they put in that stuff, but what I do know is that it's pretty freaking smart because it got the cancer into remission and enabled me to get an allogeneic stem cell transplant from my brother Lee, who was the donor. And once again, I've changed my name, everyone. My name is now Lethan, and I'm no longer my mom's favorite son, so you can put that out there. I'm skipping a lot of the details because I feel we've all heard stories like this before, but it's, bottom line, it was a horrible situation. It's tough for me to talk about, but every day I dig deep, and those same things I was talking about earlier, come into focus, that will to survive, the power of the human spirit. And so now that I'm here, I'm alive, I'm in Austin, it's been 216 days post-transplant, and I'm feeling pretty good right now, so I'm happy about that. Thank you. So I've decided to live the rest of my life by making sure to never let a crisis go to waste, because it's an opportunity to do some really important things. And for me, that means committing myself to the cause and doing everything in my power to make sure someone else doesn't have to go through the same crap that I went through. So just as I turned survivor as an opportunity to help those in Africa, I'm using my own personal cancer crisis to help those at home, right here, be becoming a megaphone for this movement to end cancer. And at first I really struggled with the idea of being public about this because it's a really gross and disgusting and ugly time. And I didn't know what would happen if I opened up my life to complete strangers all over again. But there was this moment, another moment I had that changed it all. I went into Memorial Sloan Kettering for my third cancer treatment, and I walked into that waiting room, and what punched me in the stomach, and what punches me in the stomach every single time, is that it was full. There were so many people there, always. And we sit there like strangers, yet we're so connected by this horrible situation. And then my mom and I saw this woman who was having a complete meltdown because her 4-year-old son had been whisked away to get treatment. And my mom, she stood up, she walked over to this woman, and she sat down, she put her arm around her, and she said, "That's my son. He has cancer too. It's gonna be okay." And that was the time I'm like, I don't want to do nothing anymore. So what did I do? I went straight to People magazine. What else do you do when you got cancer? But I wanted to tell the world. I realized that the details of my life had the power to help and comfort other people. So TV, print, radio, social media, they became my best friend. It became a cathartic distraction to the reality of my situation. I tweeted, I Facebooked, I blogged, I vlogged, I chat roomed. I became a spokesperson for Livestrong and Stupid Cancer, Stand Up to Cancer. I ran marathons, triathlons, cyclothons. I seeked out and I did everything possible to share my story. Because everyone goes through cancer alone, and no one can really understand what it's like to go through cancer, and everyone's experience is unique. But it was comforting for me to know that when you do feel really alone, like devastatingly alone, that I could connect with someone who's going through something similar. It put me in charge. It was empowering. And something else that was really empowering, that was quite surprised to me, that I felt going public really enlightened, was the fact that, like you guys, the entire cancer community, I realized how supportive this entire community can be. And the emails and the tweets and the fundraising on my behalf, people sent t-shirts with my face on it. Like, this was an overwhelmingly and pleasant surprise. And it's those actions and that raw generosity and willingness to help others that made my journey more manageable. And my generation of survivors, we're more open about, our cancer experience, willing to share our status, not hiding it, and openly looking for others to connect with. We like the gritty honesty, the real-time, updates and data, instant support, and recognizing ourselves in others is, quite powerful. But if anyone out there has been following my story, you may have seen a little bit of a shift in my public profile. When I was diagnosed the second time, I my outlook completely changed. I became a little bit more private, detached a little bit, because I felt like I had failed. I was really embarrassed. And because I had created, and the media had helped nurture this image of someone of strength and survival. I was supposed to be this hero and this vision of hope, a person everyone could relate to, and the cancer came back. And I used to be so strong, and now I'm like so weak. And to be honest, I didn't really want to start a story that didn't have a happy ending. And I think the general perception of cancer in this world is that there are winners and that there are losers. You either win against cancer and you stay alive, or you lose against cancer and you die. And there's like no in between. But the reality of my situation is that I did everything in my power to beat cancer, and I did, but it came back. And I think that's okay too. There are millions of people out there living with cancer and living with the reality that their disease may return. So I took a step back from this whole process, and I wanted to rewrite the story. It was once a story about me, about my cancer, my fight, my survival, my recovery, turned into a story about the movement. Maybe that initial story helped catalyze the movement. Lightning rod, I was a face people could recognize. And the second time around, I feel my story is amplifying this movement to end cancer. I got rid of that giant afro, got rid of the giant ego. I mean, my brothers might disagree with the ego part, but this is the way I've matured and evolved through this journey. And now it's more about the big picture. It's more about events like today. I'm focusing on supporting everything that's fueling this movement to end cancer. The organizations, the research, the clinical trials, survivorship, young adults, insurance, caretakers. The list will go on, because cancer is the public health crisis of our generation. But statistics can numb us to what the real problems are. We're not faceless numbers. Your friends, your family, your teammates, they're people literally sitting at these tables here today. Mothers lose their jobs because of cancer. Fathers don't have enough energy to come home and cook for their 3 kids because of cancer. Doctors and nurses have to see their patients suffer because of cancer. This is what cancer is really like. This is what people go through, and this is the face of cancer that I want to remind the world about. This room is filled with incredible CEOs, amazing, activists, scientists, but we've heard this before. Once you hear those 3 words, you have cancer, we're all the same. Cancer doesn't care who you are, what you do, how much money you make, or if you've suffered before. And with all our differences, old or young, tall or short, chubby or thin, we all share one thing in common. We're all survivors on this earth for a very short time. But it's not about how or when you leave this world. It's what you do to make the most of each day and each crisis while we're here. And I'll just finish with a quote with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands in moments of challenge and controversy." Well, my moment of comfort was when CBS handed me a big fat check. My times of challenge is with cancer, and my stand is with you, the cancer community. We're not playing a game for a big check. We're playing a game for our lives, because we are all in this together. The key is to do more than just come here today. It's to leave here motivated to challenge the status quo and to make a difference for yourself by making a difference for others. To make happiness real for others is truly the greatest gift. Follow your heart, fight for a cause, see the hope that is born in someone else's eyes because of something that we can do for them. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you for all that you're doing to make a meaningful difference in the cancer community. Thank you.